know it's a beautiful day. So maybe we can just quickly go around and folks can introduce themselves, or you guys probably don't know all of that, but just maybe a brief introduction.
Bih zvat u stvari Nina, Mayor of Gjakove.
Eleonora Sorry, Manager in European Bank for Reconstruction and Development.
Professor Michael, Business Manager in that bank.
Alitin Berisha from Universal College in Kosovo Business Network.
Professor Mustafa, CEO of Kosovo Investment Enterprise Agency within the Ministry of Trade and Industry.
Ardian Hoxha, founder of the American School of Kosovo and Duplexcom.
And Professor Gjakovë is the Executive Director of the Kosovo ICT Association.
I'm still Michael Goldberg. Still? Yeah, exactly. I'm LeBron James, power forward. All right, so and I know the mayor has to leave early, which is fine. So maybe we'll start with kind of this question of the role of government. I mean, I'm sort of curious, from what you heard, and I know, obviously we can have others jump in, but from what you heard, even in the Cleveland example of this sort of intervention, what was your reaction to kind of that Cleveland story? And are there any, in your own experience, both at a national level and at a local level, in trying to kind of have government intervention here, which pieces of what you heard about in Cleveland resonate, and which pieces were you thinking, maybe it's not so relevant here?
Thank you, Michael. Very important questions, because it was the immediate reaction when you started talking about Cleveland and were making comparison on Cleveland and Gjakovë or Kosovo. One very important distinctive element of the situation in Cleveland, or Pittsburgh for that matter, and Kosovo is the ownership element. Is the fact that in 1950s, 60s, when the industry in former Yugoslavia, part of which was Kosovo as well, started catching up, was that it was centrally managed and it was socially owned. So ownership was not, ownership of these factories or these manufacturing facilities was not in the private hands, but it was in state hand. And the markets were controlled. So supply and demand was coming programmed, was coming controlled. We were programmed to supply because the demand was controlled, someone else was controlling it. Therefore, everything in the economy, more or less, was centralized or having one actor. In Gjakovë, it was also the state and the decision makers at the federal level that were making the decision where each factory should be located. Not because it was an entrepreneur who had talent and who had a bright idea that here we have a potential or we have a mind that we can develop. Everything else afterwards, which even now makes the situation more complicated, is the fact that that ownership is still not defined. It has gone through the privatization agency, and there's a huge delays, which makes my job and everyone else's job at the local level more difficult, because as much as you're trying to give incentives, the huge amounts of land that are in Gjakovë municipality are not owned by municipality. And municipality not even that doesn't own them, but has no control over it. So it's the complete shift of what it is that we have in hand to develop with what it is that we're trying to tell people that you can do on your own, and forget about everything else that the state was imposing. But on the policy or decision-making situation, again, it makes it harder because people do not make a distinction that, okay, we were a centralized system, we were socially owned, or socialist or communist, and now we are open market economy. They still go to the municipality to look for a job. They still go or expect the government to provide jobs. But the government also made the same mistake since the end of the war by actually using it politically, saying that, okay, we create jobs as much as we can because we use that politically. And this is why it's so important in this. I don't want to discourage you, but it's very important to echo even more the entrepreneurial spirit, to actually have an even louder voice in saying to people, hey people, it's not the government, it's not the municipality, it's you. to bring the focus to the people. So we are going through two sets of transformation, the economic transformation, but also the social and psychological one, that people have to realize that the government needs to actually open venues and make legislation, but not actually take you by hand and put you in an office or give you a job, because you have to think of your own idea. And this is also the educational element that comes into play. And I'm very happy that we have also someone from the education to tell about how the education had changed from being very focused or very sort of limited to having a more thinking out of the box with new universities, with new courses, and of course with the ideas that students in college need to develop their own business ideas. Like I was taught to think when I was studying in the United States, and this is the first cultural shock that you see, that they actually focus on you. What's your idea? Not me to tell you what you should do.
Do you have any comments that you want to share?
Where do I start? I mean, first of all, I completely agree with you. We need a social and also on an individual level, we need a mindset shift. We need to move away from being dependent on the government for supporting and building and everything out there so that everybody has a job, so that everybody's taken care of. We really need to have a mindset shift so that it goes back to the individual. Before we even talk about the society, we need to talk about the individual, as the mayor said. We need to have our own ideas about how we want to build our own lives and our own livelihood. So, I mean, we have a large number of business people, this guy right here being one of my heroes. You don't depend on the government. The government is there to build and set up the legal infrastructure, mostly on contract enforcement, so that if you and I have a contractual dispute, we go to a court, it's processed quickly and it's processed fairly. But what we do, what you and I do on business terms, on a business deal, it's up to the private sector. And that's how you build the private sector, and that's how you create jobs, and that's how you develop the economy, rather than waiting for people like the mayor and myself to build you a company, to build you an economy, to employ you and to take care of you. Because at the end of the day, that's not going to happen. And just by saying it, it sounds very unrealistic. The mayor and I and all our 84,000 colleagues are not going to hire everybody. We're not going to build the economy. We're not going to build the private sector. We can. It's not a sustainable idea, rather than, and let alone a sustainable ecosystem.
And I'm curious, for any of the other panelists, on the government piece, the role of government, are there any reactions you have, whether it's from something you saw in the video or just your perspective on, just sort of given those comments, what else could the government be doing?
Well, I mean, right now there's a lot of individuals trying to do something to put together the pieces of this ecosystem. And the positive thing about the government is that they are listening more and they are talking about it. There's still just talks, like not a lot of action, but again, it's positive because they are talking about it. So hopefully, with a lot of cooperation and coordination among these individuals from the private side, hopefully the government will start to do more. And once we have a couple of examples, like success stories, the government will see a larger opportunities, because I mean, all political parties, they promised a lot and delivered nothing. I mean, one party promised 200,000 jobs, the other one 160, another one 40,000, but not even the lowest was accomplished. So they're out of promises, and they need to see new opportunities, new promises, and really the startup world. There's a lot of opportunities, and we talk about it. We say that with global startups, with global ideas, we don't need to worry about the regional problems. We don't need to worry about the barriers that Serbia imposes on us, or whatever else. You know, we can create all kinds of ideas and have them become global, like the Facebooks and like the Snapchats and like the Ubers and Airbnbs. We do have a lot of talent. We have great youth. We have an entrepreneurial spirit. We have the courage. We have seen that the group from Kosovo won the NASA Space Apps competition from 7 billion people. So there is potential. We just need to put together some of the mechanisms that grow this startup world, and like all of the potential, all of the energy will be focused towards generating new ideas, new businesses, and so on. And there's really a lot of money out there. You know, you just need to channel all the energies.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, of course.
I also have a comment.
That's not possible. Yeah? Okay, as I representing the private sector and the private companies, I always have a lot of comments towards the government. Although we are working in a close contact with we are in everyday contact with the government, different parts, government, different ministries, and what I am seeing, yeah, it's a positive sign, as my colleague mentioned, that I am seeing more interest of the government to do something in private sector. Of course, we are now just talking. Hopefully we will have something in the future. But right now, 2 years ago, they were not talking, not even talking about this. And when I went to talk with some people, you know, you could see only a few of them, like younger generation, younger ministers that could understand what the hell are you talking about. Like this lady here, who was previous Minister of Ministry of Trade and Industry. Yes, she understood and she was pushing forward some agendas, although with limited forces, of course. And we had some 2 or 3 ministers, younger generation, they understand, but they don't have the political power to push something in the government agenda. And now we are becoming more and more, and this is a positive sign, although we are far away from being something, unfortunately. And I don't like the way that these 2 guys from the government are saying, leave us alone, you can do it yourself, because why are you there? If we don't need you, if we can do everything ourselves, we don't need you, go home. So,
I am okay with that.
of course, we need you as much as you need us, because we are paying. We are paying your salaries as a private sector. Your salaries comes from our taxpayers' money. So basically, the government should do what private sector needs. They should respond on the needs, on the obstacles, and don't put us in a mood when I need to say in a big conference hall to say to the parliamentarians and to the prime minister and to some ministers to say to them, we don't need you, just leave us alone. We don't need your help. So we are in this kind of position right now.
Right. Let me flip to and it's probably good because some of my folks here, on the donor side, right? So, you know, both in Cleveland and in Kosovo, there's been heavy support. As I mentioned, in Cleveland, it's more on the foundation side. Here, there's sort of heavy donor support. So I'm curious, maybe we can start kind of from your perspective on donor engagement in the ecosystem, kind of what, you know, is it the coordination, the long-term outlook, you know, and I'm curious also for you to comment kind of your own programs at the bank that started, you know, donors can be U.S. Embassy, European Union, but also kind of corporate social responsibility. So I'm kind of curious on that side. And then the last donor question I'll ask my friend on the end. From an angel investment point of view, you know, how much when you're convincing angels to engage, how much of it is a donor mindset of saying, hey, you might make money, but there's other things in the air. So maybe each of you can share that donor perspective.
In my case, I'm donor, investor, and also bank, so I can talk for three of them. What we do as a donors, we are funded by European Union and other donors as well to help companies in increasing management capacities and helping them to boost their companies. So whatever advice they need, we are there to support them, and we subvent this part of advisory projects, let's say. So far, also I must say, I must be honest, that donors were not coordinated at all. We have plenty of donors that overlap their project. And of course, just recently, 2-3 years ago, it started really donors focusing on private sector before they used to be more in humanitarian aid or social or increasing. That's why we have so many NGOs because of that. So I would just recently we started doing more coordination between main donors like European Union, USAID, and also Switzerland, which are the biggest donors in Kosovo. And I expect that soon we will have strategic coordination between each other. So if we go to one company, at least one to support in another side, in terms of financing, for example, and others to look to advisory or infrastructure and etc. So far we haven't, let's see this year or next year if we will have more concrete results from these coordination activities. As an investor, what I would like, what Ariane said about, because I haven't been in the US, so for me it was the first time to hear. Also in terms, we don't have a common mindset also, all actors. So this is maybe a good opportunity to think also between actors, how we can come to a common project and how we can coordinate. The another thing, what we see is that companies, what we say to the companies as an investor is that first you need to trust in your project, because if you trust, then your pitching presentation can also convince me. Also, they need to look also to other opportunities as well, because we can land also as a bank. They have commercial banks that now they have also favorable conditions and rate. But in order to have us as a, because we can become equity partner or quasi-equity partner, and this is that they do not understand. So they want our money to increase the company, and then they do not want us to get the return on investment and the value. So this is important. Maybe what we missed as a bank was explaining clearly to the companies the benefits of being a quasi or equity partner and what we expect at the end. So I think that we are trying to do that, but 3 years we haven't succeeded so far. So with landing it's more okay.
Okay, so I will tell the story from the commercial bank's perspective. Normally, commercial banks don't get involved in early stage financing. That is the place where you find angel investors and venture capitalists. Initially, to be honest, we started this initiative of entrepreneurship for CSR reasons. However, we identified that especially the women entrepreneurship part has potential. And we designed a program that will offer both access to finance and increasing of capacity building trainings. So for the first time, we as a bank, we decided to finance startups. Normally, we don't finance startups from other market niches. And also we engaged in offering training sessions all over Kosovo through a consulting company from Turkey. Around 300 women have participated in these trainings. We signed an agreement with the BRD. We are utilizing their lines, and also they are helping us in increasing the capacities of these women. There are around 600 women financed until now. I have to emphasize 60 of them have been startups. Initially, our business plan was much more ambitious. We wanted to have 100 billion a year. However, the challenges have not been on the supply side, rather they have been on the demand side. I've been participating a lot on this capacity building events, and once I was sitting here, I was explaining the program, how it works and what we are doing. And beside me there was a representative of Empower program, which are giving grants. And there were around 100 participants, all women entrepreneurs. And none of them came to ask about the conditions of the loan. All of them went to the one who's giving grants. And I was thinking to myself, okay, so where is the entrepreneurial spirit in this? If you're not willing to take risks, what are we doing? But I have another story from last week, again, a capacity building event. And I was speaking about business development, and then I realized that in the panel there was a lady from Ferizai, if I'm not mistaken, and she was engaged in the business of producing sweets. And she had she had managed to sign an agreement, distribution agreement with Aldi, this brand in Europe, supermarket chain. And I was thinking to myself, so this is what an entrepreneur is. If they are facing constraints in the domestic market, then they will look for solutions somewhere outside. So as we work with this group of people, as I said, commercial banks are not really active participants in this sector. You get to see a lot of profiles, a lot of attitudes, a lot of mindsets. However, we are in the initial phase, and this is normal. So I think that all actors engaged in the ecosystem should participate more on the education side and promote entrepreneurship as a career option.
Before you speak, I'm warning the crowd. We're going to audience questions are next. So be ready. Don't let me down. Yeah.
So you better prepare your questions.
Exactly. Better be good.
Well, I think it's really hard to be the last one to speak because you get so angry. All the things that have been spoken, and you say, I'm going to say this and that, and then you really get to a point where you don't know what to say. The first issue is, I'm a bit too far on the right libertarian side. So for me, even in the video I said, government, hands off. Just leave us alone. Just like the guy said, and he's the only. And yeah, I disagree with Riolza on that. So in my opinion, I think it's, I don't really believe in governments, that governments can help. And there are many cases where really government helps. So in my opinion, hands off. That's the first thing. The second is the donor community. I'm also very angry at the donor community as well. Because I think the donors has distorted our entrepreneurial thinking quite a bit. So what sort of entrepreneurs we are? We are $5,000 entrepreneurs. So we look for because the grants are small. I mean, the grants help you with startup, maybe just to very, very little. And then, so what is happening is that we are becoming entrepreneurs for the sake of getting the grant. A lot of that has happened in the last several years here in Kosovo. And the donors are also competing, for example, for the banking sector in this case, or even with us. So on the angel side, where we are, it is very hard. It is extremely hard. First of all, in all our network, in the Kosovo, we don't have a single big exit guy who's with us. So we're still active entrepreneurs ourselves. And we are there because we want to do something for the
Sorry,
ecosystem.
can you repeat once again? You don't have single what?
Exit. None of the guys who is a member of our network has sold his business 20, 30, 50 million euros, 100 million euros, and he has the money, he doesn't do anything else, he has the money now and he will invest in startups. We have only Vladimir Gjakovë, one guy in Kosovo who is a typical angel profile. I mean, he has done a successful exit, he has the money, he's not part of our network, but he is he is a typical angel investor. We're not, unfortunately. We are all active entrepreneurs. So that's the main challenge. And when we are active entrepreneurs, we believe we are always smarter than the guys that we talk to, that they come to us to ask for money, unfortunately, or most of the time. And the third is 99.9999% of Kosovars have never heard about angel investing. Because it's normal. I mean, we didn't. I heard about angel investing for the first time, I think, in 2007, as a term. You know, not to know what exactly it was, but just as a term. And so that is problematic. Also, to bring on board angel investors will be able to not only give their capital, but also their mentorship and their network and their help. When I read your story and how you helped turn around the company, so that's the angel investor. It's not just the money that is given. And on the entrepreneur side, we had a lot of, we did pitches. We started with regular pitches, bi-monthly pitches. And what was happening is that a lot of pitches, a lot of entrepreneurs who came to us, they wanted a grant. They thought, they didn't really know who we are, what we are. They heard there was a pitching somewhere, someone is giving money, and we need to convince them to give us money. And a lot of them, wanted the free money. They were not very happy, even though they had just an idea. Okay? And 99.9% of all of these, they never became businesses. They were so unwillingly to give you the opportunity to also be a shareholder in their own company. And basically I mentioned one thing which I will end this discussion from my side, is that, from my side I said, the problem is I speak to around 8,000 high school students every year throughout Kosovo. I talk about entrepreneurship, creativity, and try to inspire these young guys to see entrepreneurship as a career opportunity and career option. And the first question I ask is, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Today or after 3 years or 4 years when you finish your university? Unfortunately, 90% want to work for the government. So that is the biggest main obstacle, is that government has become so lucrative that even myself sometimes think maybe I should work for the government. Not to be a minister or a high level, because that's a bit, you have to work a lot. But second level is really nice, because you don't do a lot of efforts and you get, we say maybe small salary, but a lot of benefits. So it has become lucrative. It has that security, and in Kosovo, if you're in the public sector, it's really, hiring and firing is very hard. I mean, a mayor can tell you, and Besan can tell you that it's extremely hard to fire people. So everyone wants that security. Once you're in the government, you're there for life. Unless you kill someone. And then, it may change.
Well, even that.
Even that, you have to, you do the, exactly.
Still very hard to find someone.
Exactly.
If I just may continue,
Yeah, please.
half the sentence.
Yes.
Did you finish?
I'm taking over.
Government.
The problem, yes, always interfere in private sector. The problem with 90% of people, kids wanting to work in government is not the huge number. It's the fact that they don't want to work for government for the right reason, say, oh, I want to go in and change things because the way this is doing things is wrong, and I want to go in and make a change and make a difference and really do this correction. It's because, oh, I want that security, where I do very little work, nobody can really fire me, I'm pretty much set for life. And that's the mindset, that's the shift in mindset I was talking about earlier. That don't depend on the government, have a small government so that you really have no choice or very little opportunity to work in government, so you're kind of stuck with the private sector. And if you're stuck with the private sector, and they say, a lot of entrepreneurs say, I made it big because I have no plan B. So that's what I'm for to a certain extent. If you have no plan B, the government isn't there, and all you got is the private sector, well, you're kind of stuck with it, and you have to develop yourself.
Yeah, that's why I like this guy. He's the only libertarian
He's a banker.
Once he was on that.
He's an MBA mayor and a banker.
The reason that related to kids are saying that, it's not because they know what they're saying, it's because they hear this at home.
Right.
And I think this is a problem. Because this is how they've been educated or raised, by thinking of you need security. And I can mention tens or hundreds of times that anytime I wanted to challenge myself with any new opportunity, job, offer, anything, the first reaction from the parents, unfortunately, it's always the one, no, it's dangerous, or it's risky. And every recommendation, it goes back again to the system that I say that our society is still in transition. But what it takes to change this, what's the tipping point that the turn will happen in Kosovo? Again, unfortunately, it will come, or it needs to come from both sides, from the grassroots with entrepreneurial initiatives, but it also has to come for much brave government decisions. Because two main mistakes that happened throughout these years after the war is that the government, first of all, was recruiting at the time where donors were spoiling the job market in Kosovo by offering 5 times higher salaries than the public sector. So the government remained the one, right after the war, to get the people that literally no one wanted. And these people now are probably high up in the system if they went into the ladder of career. That's the first. And the second is that government, by wanting now to actually do a reform in public sector, started increasing salaries without having a real measurement or evaluation of the performance of the public sector. And again, distorted private sector, because now jobs and salaries in the public sector are not low jobs, are not low paid jobs, are jobs that everyone would want. And someone in the private sector cannot compete now with the government increasing salaries. So again, it has to come. I think the solution is from the government. It needs to cut some ministries, public jobs, but also the remaining of funds to be shifted to the private sector.
Like
at least. Yes, but they've done it right immediately after the election, so they have the full election cycle going back to the 4-year cycle to actually recuperate. Government of Kosovo will not do that now, specifically because they don't know whether they'll have elections this year, next year. But it definitely needs to be a government that says that we need to cut jobs up to 30% or 40% the first year and then continue.
Right. Questions? Latosh, you want to take the mic? Yes, sir.
Hi to everybody. My name is Mentor Jerry. I'm from the Municipal Investment and Business Support Office in the municipality of Viti. It's a quite small municipality, small community. Yeah, I mean, as the municipality of Gjakove, also maybe the mayor of Viti did some initial, very symbolic steps in terms of providing capacity and training and education to startups and business community in the municipality. So there are a lot of problems because reality in Pristina totally is different from reality out of Pristina. So in terms of maybe donor investment in these intermediary organizations to support business, maybe they should also start thinking of getting a little bit out of Pristina, because also businesses out of Pristina need to support, etc., etc. Maybe I will put my focus in two issues discussed here, especially linked to the second video about the role of the government and the interview of the Minister of Economic Development. We heard that he said that the government will set up a fund to finance and to support new businesses, existing businesses, new business, especially in ICT and some other sectors. Due to my political beliefs, I have some also hesitation about the government running these things. Yes, yes, definitely yes. And we have arguments for that. We have a big fund for agriculture run by the government, and this agricultural fund is increasing every year. This year, we had 20 million investing in agriculture, while on the other hand, we don't see any results, any big impact in the agriculture sector. Also, to that, Minister mentioned that these funds will be channeled through banks. Considering the through banks. Yes, okay. Are there maybe a question for people from the government? Are there more details about how and who and when and file-wise about this fund? And also I would like to have a perspective from Michael in comparison with the fund he mentioned from Cleveland, because there you had the government intervention jointly with the private sector. So, I mean, what is your stand in that regard? Should the government run the whole show alone? Should it be maybe through local intermediaries with the knowledge and skills to run these kind of funds? Or maybe through the banks, which in case of Kosovo, they are not investment banks. They are commercial banks, meaning that as long as you have collateral or they have a security that you will pay back, they don't care about the business plan and things like that. Thank you.
I can give just brief information about this idea. It's still an idea, but it's making progress, and there will be a fund, and probably what you heard is one piece that the World Bank and other donors, organizations will participate in this fund. So there will be like a 4 or 5 million euros fund, and he said that it will be managed by a manager, etc., etc. But I don't think that those details have been decided. But there is the will, and like I said at the beginning, there's talks. Also from Minister Gjakovë Bayramı, and now they're working on the administrative instruction for incubators and so on. So there is talks, there is small steps. So if we were to categorize it as the business, it's on the seed stage. So basically, there is a movement, but it's not going to be through the banks. It's not for sure.
Did you have anything else to add? Yeah.
Just one thing. I think, regardless of the bank or the World Bank or whoever else wants to get involved, without private sector involvement in these funds, I think this, to me, it makes no sense. Yeah. If we don't have people like yourself, fund managers, VCs, whether they're local, regional, or global, if they're not involved, if they don't have skin in that game, and by their own skin, they don't only just bring their money, but they also bring their know-how, whether they like it or not. Without that, I think it's still not a full effort, so it's still going to lack in results.
Maybe I'll give a couple. Go ahead. Do you want
I can. The gentleman that I mentioned, showed you the email. Gjakove, he's from Czech Republic, and they're actually raising a 20 million euros fund that has Kosovo in their investment map as well. And the Czech Republic will participate, I think, with 5 million euros. So once that fund is completed, I think it's going to be somewhere in March 2017, and there will be some investments. That will be a model that our country can follow, and create this public-private partnership that the minister mentioned, and probably hire a fund manager, whether local or a professional person, international. Yeah, and then take things forward.
Just a couple, and then I can share. Did you want to share? Oh, please, yeah.
I usually don't.
The mic had to pass. You have your chance.
I usually don't believe in things until I see them.
Right.
So we are talking so much about this innovation fund, and nothing has happened right now. There are some initiatives, and everything is still blurry. Nobody knows how it will function, and what will be, the procedures and the criteria and everything. So I agree with the guy from Vitia that we don't want to end up with a fund similar to the one from agriculture, because we don't want to give people money. We want to create something. And I hope that with Bessian's suggestion that private sector should be inside, and it should be, because we, the private sector, were part of this IT strategy, and within the IT strategy there is a creation of innovation fund. So this is one of the steps or one of the activities within the national IT strategy. And right now we are a little bit aside. Nobody is consulting us about this, and we just wait to see what will happen. So this is the situation right now. And I think we should wait till 2017 to have some more clear picture on this.
Just party organs are.
Just to answer to your question, in terms of our beneficiaries, 90% are outside of Pristina, so these are our results. And I would like to also mention two funds that are available now under Enterprise Development Investment Framework. This is a framework that is for Western Balkan countries, and there are involved different partners like European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, European Investment Bank, European Commission, and KfW. And for the private sector, there are two funds available. One is Innovation Fund, which is managed by a fund manager from Slovenia. And another one is Expansion Fund that is managed by European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The first one is for seed capital for startups. So innovation means everything, not only ICT, but also in other sectors as well. And the another one is for existing companies, medium size, that have investment needs of more than 1 million euros. And the first fund is up to 150,000 euros. So these are two available funds for Western Balkan, which also Kosovo is part of that.
Just a couple of, I shared a couple of examples in Ohio, and it's intriguing to me, the discussion and this question of sort of how do you get private involvement. I mean, I'll start on the angel side. I mean, one thing that strikes me just from a few initial conversations about angels and the education process of angels. I mean, if, for example, if this new fund would be actually implemented in partnership with, say, Kosovo. So you say, okay, and like a number of the initiatives in Ohio for example, government won't be, say, more than 25% of the fund. So the venture capital fund of funds that I get money from, government can be no more than 25% of the overall fund, and it is a fund of funds, so it's deployed through a manager that's investing in venture. So it's requiring that private sector commitment. It sounds like on the angel side, and again, I don't know what degree you guys are lobbying for this at all, but to really catalyze, whether it's venture capital or angel investment. And you know, the other intriguing thing is kind of with some of these funds, like you're talking about, how could work in partnership, but that may be the honey to help it. I don't know, I mean, I'm curious in your reaction. If the government sort of said this new innovation fund would be deployed in partnership with Kosovo, would that, because we're doing this basically, I mentioned it briefly, we're incentivizing the formation of angel funds through matching dollars and some management fees. Like, would that work?
I think that would work. I mean, in the other part of the video that is not shown, I mentioned specifically that it's the only thing where the government can really do something in this case, or that I believe is the matchmaking, right. You know, the matching the funds. Right. So we don't want the government to do 100%. Right. We don't want that, right. You know. But once, I mean, it's also for the government, it's really profitable because I'm putting my own money. Yeah. If we are putting 5 million, I find 5 million private money, and the government puts, if it's 50% in our case, another 5 million. I think it's the best spent 5 million they will ever have. Because I will make sure my money is not burned. I will make sure that we're investing in projects that have a return on investment. Of course, government may want impact as well. So that's why they're putting the money. So we will have impact as one of these categories that we pay attention when investing. But I think it's the most important thing that can happen. Because in that way you can also include, you know, you can make the angel investors more excited about it. Right. You can grow the sector, and there is a lot of private money. I mean, there are, Bestia knows better, but I think around 2 billion euros, a bit more than 2 billion euros in the banks in Kosovo, sleeping, you know. So, I mean, that's money. So it means that there are private individuals who have money. Yeah. So if you could do this with the government matchmaking, I think that would be perfect. We talked about that with the minister. He was like, oh yeah, interesting, but we didn't go into the details, and we still don't know.
That may be the most, you know, attracting real venture capital to this region may be very challenging. I mean, you know, when you said there's a Slovenian manager or even a Czech manager, maybe Kosovo is part of the portfolio. I mean, it's still a relatively small place. I mean, the fact that you've been able to figure out a market, that you've been able to have your program move from CSR to actually a market-driven program is intriguing and exciting, and I think it speaks well of what's happening here. But I think, you know, and I'm just looking at the clock, and I know there's food, so I'll end it. But I mean, a couple reactions. I mean, one, I think there does seem to be some real excitement. I mean, even given what's happening with education, I mean, there's young and some are here. I met some yesterday. There does seem to be some energy and kind of that early pipeline. There seems always to be the same challenge. Like, you know, you'll know this long-term perspective of sort of how long it's going to take for you to be successful. And we have on this panel a number of people that are successful entrepreneurs that have been successful, and you're role models for others, and many of you are giving back. This is going to take decades of work, and all that sort of early groundwork. And I think this continuing to experiment, and it sounds like, I mean, the fact that you came from the private sector and are doing what you're doing, or that the mayor has her background, you have to keep experimenting. And you know, I think the last piece is on the donor side. You know, there's I talk about it in my book. You know, there's this fatigue. I mean, it's even interesting as an American coming to Kosovo. It's like, oh yeah, Kosovo. You know, I mean, you're not so much in the news anymore. You know, I mean,
which is good or bad?
I don't know. I mean, that's the question, right? So donors are going to move to there's other parts of the world. And I lived in South Africa for several years. That was sort of the centerpiece of donor activity. And then things are getting better, and then donors are moving, and that may be, I mean, what some of the comments were about, there's good and bad with donor activity, but while donors are still here, how do we engage them? I mean, I was asking Mentor last night, like, how do donors measure success in these various programs? I mean, so I'd say overall, and it's great to be on a panel with you and Fatosh, I really appreciate you putting this together. I mean, it seems like a lot's happening, and I would say just from my side, and there's many people around the world that are kind of struggling with the same thing, so I think you want to continue to look. We talked about Turkey as an example that's doing some interesting things on angel investing. I think the models are out there. You have to figure out what will work best in Kosovo and how you can get buy-in. Yep.
The thing, I'm quite hopeful actually, because there is this ecosystem being, evolving. I mean, during this conference, I took a picture and I SMS'd a few times with the Minister of Economic Development. He said, hi, well, everyone. I posted a snap in the Snapchat, the Minister of Labor. I said, where is this going on? And we have the mayor here, was your minister. We have Bessan here. So basically, I think it's sometimes we complain too much because we have access. I mean, in Kosovo we can do this. Even it's more. I mean, we have to do. We as Kosovo, as Universum, Violca, Bessan. So we also have to do. We don't always have to complain and ask from the government. So we have that access, and I think it's things are moving because everyone is really now working much closer with each other.
And we can openly say to the government whatever we have to say, which is not the case in other countries.
Or we just talk about Erdogan, bad stuff, and they understand we're talking about that.
The conversation centered a lot on the role of government and how much they are doing or how much they are not doing. However, I would like to emphasize that this entrepreneurship market or this angel investing thing, they are really in the beginning phase, and we are speaking about something that is really at the initial stages. While working for 2 years now in this field, what I see missing is maybe there is not as much cooperation between the different parts as it should be. Either because of lack of awareness, maybe I don't know what Violca is doing, or maybe I don't know what Aletin is doing. So, okay, we can focus on the government, but at the same time, we can see about the different initiatives we are starting at company level, individual level, and see how we can create synergy with other people in the market. So this would help.
Talking about whether it's good or bad to be on the news. I mean, we went on the news in the 90s because the war was started, and we got the attention of the world. So right now, I said that there's talks. They started to talk, and because they are out of promises, all of the promises that they made, none of them was really fulfilled, at least not fully. So there needs to be new promises, and basically there is public pressure, social pressure that we need to focus on the economy. So this is one of the best strategies to move the economy forward, to create jobs, to not worry about the political barriers that we have. Who's going to worry whether our country is recognized or not when you have a second Facebook, a second Snapchat, you know? Who's going to worry about whether your country is recognized, whether you need to put the asterisk or whatever, the Kosovo, whether you need your flag or not. So, I mean, we, like my friends are saying, we need to coordinate ourselves. We're getting to know all the actors who's who and who's doing what. We need to work with our government government, which they are cooperative, they really are, and have the government take the initial steps, whether it is in the legal infrastructure. We need like laws for incubators, for accelerators, for VCs, for funds, for angel investors. Like, who waits an angel investor? Like in the US, you have to have at least $1 million of liquid capital to be an angel investor. Who is an angel investor here? It's all these small elements that the government needs to make and then get out of the way. You know, so it needs to start with the government. It's much more difficult to create a private accelerator because it's not going to be able to survive with the amount of projects, with the amount of businesses, with the amount of ideas to invest in. So we need the government to step in initially, partner with the private sector, and then get out of the way. You know?
No, it's interesting. I mean, we in Cleveland in my movie we talk about
an artificial reef, right? So we were barren too, right? And then you start putting NGOs and donors and government. And then the question is, I mean, it's a great question. When do you pull out? So, I mean, it's something. I mean, again, I think these kind of discussions in a day like today brings people together for conversation. There's a lot to do. And then I think you always sort of say, hey, when do you pull out and how long is it going to take? And that's a whole other, I mean, expectations from investors. Yeah, right. All right, I see they're setting up lunch. Batos, did you want to say a final? Okay, but thank you to the panelists. This was a great discussion.
It's fine, no problem.
Będę gjithë për pjesëmarrjen sot, ishte më vërtet një konferencë dhe një panel shumë I fuqishëm, mendoj për do të na nxjerrë neve që ndalën të formulojmë më mirë orientimet tona, edhe gjithë së bashku të publikojmë atë formën tonë për lehtësimin e kushtet e sa më të mira për ndërmarrësirinë, edhe kisha vështirë që në video të radhës të publikohen, kemi të pasur dhe shembuj të kompanive ndryshme të shumta të suksesshme në Kosovë, edhe çert mandu, ne do të promovojmë atë video, na lejoni të gjithë bashku me partnerët të promovojmë dhe nëpërmes platformës së Kosovës që është e pranuar në gjithë shtetet e botës të japim kontributin tonë në promovimin e Kosovës. Besoj të ta konfirmojmë që sa minuta, më të mirë po. Faleminderit shumë.